There is no job in London, is there? My voice was barely a whisper as I stared at the email on my laptop screen. Messages between Daniel and someone named Kate filled my vision, laying bare months of calculated deception. It was all just a lie. My husband didn't answer. He stood in our empty living room, empty because we had sold everything for this supposed fresh start, and his silence said more than words ever could. My name is Celine Harris, and until this moment, I thought I was preparing for an exciting new chapter in Minneapolis. As a financial analyst at Parker & Reed, I had built a solid career over the past decade. But when Daniel came home 3 months ago bursting with news about an incredible opportunity in London, I didn't hesitate to support him. That's what partners do, right? They believe in each other. I sold our house, the first home I had ever owned. I donated furniture that I had carefully chosen piece by piece. I even sold my grandmother's antique mirror, the only thing I had left of her, because Daniel insisted we needed to travel light. Now I understood why he had pushed so hard for me to liquidate everything. How long? I asked, my voice steadier now as anger began to replace shock. How long have you been planning this with her? Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward his packed suitcase by the door. Celine, How long? 8 months, he finally admitted. Kate and it just happened, and then the plan just sort of evolved, like it was some natural progression to systematically destroy your wife's life. I felt sick thinking about how methodically they must have planned this, waiting until I had sold everything, converted all our assets to cash, stripped away every safety net I had built. The money's already gone, isn't it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I'm a financial analyst. I should have seen the signs. But love makes you blind, and I had trusted him completely. You'll land on your feet, Daniel said, reaching for his suitcase. You always do. As he walked toward the door, I felt something shift inside me. He was right about one thing. I always landed on my feet, and this time would be no different. As the door clicked shut behind him, I opened my laptop and began to type. Daniel had no idea who he was dealing with. Daniel and I met 6 years ago during a financial technology conference in Minneapolis. I remember being impressed by his drive and ambition. He was working for a smaller firm but had big dreams of making it to the top. What I didn't realize then was that his ambition would eventually consume everything, including our marriage. Looking back, I can see the warning signs I chose to ignore. Like how he always seemed to take more than he gave. When we first got married, I had just received a significant promotion at Parker & Reed. Instead of celebrating my success, Daniel convinced me to use my bonus to help him start his own consulting business. It's an investment in our future, he'd said. I believed him. That was my first mistake, but far from my last. For years, I supported his ventures, both financially and emotionally. When his first business failed, I worked overtime to keep us afloat. When he wanted to try again, I took out a loan against my 401k to fund it. Each time he swore things would be different. Each time, I believed him. My cousin Nina tried to warn me last year. Celine, she'd said during one of our coffee dates, don't you think it's strange that Daniel never wants you involved in his business decisions? You're literally a financial analyst. I defended him, of course. He doesn't want to burden me, I'd replied. Besides, he's my husband. I trust him. Trust. What a foolish word that seems now. The signs were all there. The late-night phone calls he'd take in the garage, the sudden business trips that he could never quite explain, the way he started encouraging me to sell my assets months ago, claiming we needed to simplify our lives. I had nearly $400,000 in equity from the house sale, plus another $200,000 from my retirement accounts and investments. All of it converted to cash, just like he suggested, to make the international move easier. All of it now gone, transferred to accounts I couldn't trace. The irony doesn't escape me. I spend my days analyzing financial patterns for multi-million-dollar corporations, identifying inconsistencies and preventing fraud. Yet I couldn't, or wouldn't, see what was happening in my own home. But as I sat there in our empty rental house, surrounded by nothing but packed boxes and broken dreams, something inside me hardened. I might have been blind before, but my eyes were wide open now. And what I was about to do would make Daniel wish he'd never underestimated me. My hands trembled as I dug deeper into Daniel's email history. Each message revealed another layer of their scheme. Kate wasn't just Daniel's mistress. She was a former client who'd helped him orchestrate everything. They'd been planning their escape for months, carefully manipulating me into liquidating all our assets. The wife suspects nothing, Daniel had written to her 6 weeks ago. She's too busy planning our imaginary life in London to notice anything else. Almost makes me feel bad for her. Almost. The casualness of that word made my stomach turn. I printed everything, my analyst's mind kicking into gear. Their messages painted a clear picture. While I was selling our house and dissolving my life in Minneapolis, they were setting up their new one in Austin. They'd already bought a house there, using my money, of course. The deed was in Kate's name, dated just 3 days ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "I'm sorry it ended this way. I've left signed divorce papers with my lawyer. It's better for both of us to make this quick and clean." Quick and clean, like ripping off a Band-Aid. Except he'd taken everything, leaving me with nothing but packed boxes and an empty rental house I couldn't afford. I called Parker and Reed, my hands shaking. Linda, my boss, answered on the second ring. "I need help," I said, my voice cracking. "I can't come to London next month for the client meeting because there is no London." The whole story spilled out. There was a long pause before Linda spoke. "Celine, I need you to listen carefully. What Daniel and his accomplice have done isn't just morally wrong. It's criminal fraud. You need to call the police right now. Then call your bank. I'm texting you the number of a good lawyer. Use it. And Celine, your job is secure. Take whatever time you need." I felt the first tears roll down my cheeks. Not from sadness, but from relief at having at least one anchor in my life. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls. Police, banks, lawyer. Each conversation hammered home the magnitude of what Daniel had done. But it was a call from my bank that finally broke me. "Mrs. Harris, I'm afraid the majority of the transfers were authorized by you," the fraud representative said gently. "Since you willingly converted and moved the assets, there's very little we can do." I hung up and looked around the empty house. Empty because I had deliberately stripped it bare for our fresh start. In the fading afternoon light, I caught my reflection in the window. I barely recognized myself. But as I stared at my reflection, something shifted in my eyes. I was a financial analyst who specialized in tracking money trails. I had contacts, skills, and knowledge that Daniel knew nothing about. He thought he had broken me, but he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I spent the next week working from my cousin Nina's guest room, converting it into what looked like a detective's office. Every wall was covered with printouts, bank statements, property records, email trails. Each night I stayed up late, following the money trail Daniel had left behind. "You need to sleep," Nina said, bringing me coffee one morning. She looked at the dark circles under my eyes with concern. "You can't keep going like this." "I can't sleep," I replied, scrolling through another bank statement. "Not while they're living it up with my money in Austin." I'd already traced the largest transfer, $380,000 that had moved through 3 different banks before landing in an account in Kate's name. That money had bought their house, a fact that made my blood boil. They were probably decorating it right now with expensive furniture while I slept on an air mattress. My lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, called with an update that made everything worse. "The police are treating it as a civil matter," she explained. "Since you authorized the transfers, and there's evidence you knew about the accounts." "Because he told me they were for our move," I interrupted. "For our supposed new life in London." "I understand," Sarah said patiently, "but proving fraud will be difficult. These cases often come down to he said, she said, and the paper trail shows your consent." I hung up feeling defeated. That evening, I made my first mistake. I called Daniel. "You won't get away with this," I said when he answered. He chuckled, actually chuckled. "Get away with what? You signed everything over willingly. Check the paperwork, Celine. You're the financial expert, after all." "I'll fight this," I warned. "I'll take you to court." "With what money?" His voice was calm, confident. "Face it, Celine. It's over. Move on." After he hung up, I did something I hadn't allowed myself to do yet. I broke down completely. All the stress, anger, and humiliation came pouring out. Nina found me sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers, sobbing. "I've lost everything," I whispered. "My home, my savings, my retirement. Everything I worked for is just gone." Nina sat down beside me, picking up one of the bank statements. "Not everything," she said firmly. "You still have your skills, your intelligence, and you have me." She was right about one thing. I still had my skills. And as I wiped my eyes, an idea started forming. Daniel had manipulated me personally, but professionally, I was still at the top of my game. At Parker & Reed, I had access to sophisticated financial tracking tools, ones that could follow money trails far more effectively than personal bank searches. I called Linda the next morning. "I need to take some vacation days," I said. "And I need a favor." Linda listened as I explained my plan. When I finished, there was a long pause. "You understand what you're asking?" she said finally. "Using company resources for personal matters is against policy." "I know," I replied quietly. "But I also know how many times my work has saved the company millions. I've never asked for anything in return. Until now." Another pause. "You have 2 weeks of vacation time," she said finally. "What you do at that time is your business. Just be careful, Celine, and don't do anything illegal." I hung up feeling energized for the first time in days. Daniel thought he had won, thought he had broken me, but he was about to learn a hard lesson. Never underestimate a woman who knows how to follow the money. Using Parker and Reed's financial tracking software after hours felt strange, but I pushed aside my guilt. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice. The programs I used daily to trace corporate fraud patterns started revealing something unexpected about Daniel and Kate's scheme. "They got sloppy," I told Nina over breakfast. "They thought they covered their tracks, but they made rookie mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" she asked, leaning forward. "Kate's been moving money between accounts, trying to hide the trail. But she's using a pattern, transferring funds every 3 days, always in specific amounts. The software picked up on it immediately." But that wasn't the biggest revelation. As I dug deeper, I discovered something that made my heart race. Daniel and Kate had been running a small-scale Ponzi scheme through his consulting business. They'd defrauded at least 6 other people before targeting me. I found my hands shaking as I read through the evidence. Names, dates, amounts. It was all there. They'd used their charm to convince people to invest, show them fake returns for a few months, then disappear with the money. I wasn't their first victim. I was just their biggest score yet. I called Sarah immediately. "This changes everything," she said after I explained. "We're no longer looking at a divorce dispute. We're looking at wire fraud and investment fraud. This is federal territory now." But I wasn't ready to go to the authorities yet. I needed more proof, and I had another card to play first. I reached out to Marcus, an old college friend who now worked at the bank where Kate had opened her newest account. Over coffee, I laid out what I'd found. "Jesus, Celine," he said, reviewing the documents. "This is serious stuff." "I know," I replied. "That's why I need your help." What happened next was like watching dominoes fall. Marcus flagged Kate's account for suspicious activity. This triggered an automatic freeze right when they were closing on another investment property. The timing couldn't have been better. Within hours, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "What did you do?" It was Kate, showing her first sign of panic. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded all my evidence to the other victims I'd identified. One by one, they started coming forward, each with their own story of betrayal. Linda called me that evening. "Celine, we've been contacted by the FBI about some irregular transactions you've flagged in our system." I took a deep breath. "I can explain everything." "No need," she interrupted. "I've already told them you had my authorization to use the software. They want to meet with you tomorrow." That night, I sat in Nina's guest room, staring at my laptop screen. I had access to one more nuclear option, an option I'd been saving. Daniel had made one critical mistake. He'd used the same password for everything since college, including his email. With a few keystrokes, I logged into his account. There it was. Every conversation with Kate, every plan they'd made, every lie they'd told. I downloaded everything, my finger hovering over the forward button. With one click, I could send it all to his entire professional network. I thought about how he'd laughed on the phone, so confident in his victory. The old Celine might have hesitated, might have shown mercy. But I wasn't the old Celine anymore. I clicked send. The response was immediate and devastating. Within hours of sending those emails, Daniel's professional world imploded. His clients, colleagues, and business partners all received documented proof of his fraud scheme. His phone must have been exploding with messages because he finally broke his silence. "You've ruined me," he texted. "Are you happy now?" I stared at his message, feeling nothing but cold determination. "No, Daniel, I'm just getting started." The FBI meeting the next morning was intense. I sat in a sterile conference room with two agents, methodically walking them through everything I'd uncovered. They seemed particularly interested in the pattern of fraud against multiple victims. "Mrs. Harris," Agent Roberts said, "what you've uncovered here isn't just one isolated incident. This appears to be a sophisticated criminal enterprise." I handed them my final piece of evidence, a detailed spreadsheet tracking every transaction, every victim, every dollar. "They thought they could hide their trail," I explained. "But money always leaves footprints if you know where to look." That's when things took an unexpected turn. Agent Roberts slid a document across the table. "We've been watching Ms. Catherine Bennett, Kate, for the past year. She's been involved in similar schemes in 3 other states." My heart stopped. "What?" "She's a professional con artist, Mrs. Harris. And it seems your husband was not just her accomplice. He may have been her mark, too." I felt the room spin slightly. The agent's words hit me like a physical blow. Could Daniel have been played as well? Had Kate manipulated him the same way they'd manipulated me? But before I could process this revelation, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Marcus. "Kate's trying to empty the frozen accounts. She's at the bank right now, making a scene." I excused myself and called Marcus immediately. "She's threatening legal action," he explained. "Says she'll sue the bank for wrongful account freezing. She's got a lawyer with her." "Don't release anything," I insisted. "The FBI is involved now." "There's more," Marcus added, his voice tense. "She's claiming the money was a legitimate business investment. She's got documentation with your signature on it." My blood ran cold. I remembered signing a stack of papers Daniel had given me, supposedly for our London move. "Those signatures were obtained under false pretenses," I argued. "That may be true, but it complicates things legally." I rushed back into the conference room where the FBI agents were preparing to leave. "Kate's at Meridian Bank right now," I blurted out. "She's trying to access the accounts." They exchanged glances. "Mrs. Harris," Agent Roberts said carefully, "we need you to understand something. If you've taken any actions that could be considered illegal—" "Everything I did was legal," I interrupted. "I just followed the money. That's my job." But as they hurried out, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Had I gone too far? Had my desire for revenge made me sloppy? I pulled out my phone and called Sarah, my lawyer. As it rang, I saw another text from Daniel. "You have no idea what you've started. Kate isn't who you think she is. We're both in danger now." For the first time since this began, I felt a flicker of fear. What had I actually stumbled into? I need to speak with Daniel. I made this decision after a sleepless night of weighing my options. If Kate was really who the FBI claimed, I needed to understand the full scope of what we were dealing with. Nina thought I was crazy to even consider it. "He'll just manipulate you again," she warned. But I wasn't the same naive woman who had trusted him blindly. I arranged to meet Daniel at a coffee shop near Nina's house, making sure it was public and well-populated. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. Gone was his usual confident demeanor. He looked haunted, nervous. "Kate's gone," he said without preamble, sliding into the seat across from me. "She cleared out everything she could access before the accounts were frozen. Even the house has been sold." "How does it feel?" I asked coldly. "Being the one who's left with nothing?" His hands trembled as he placed a USB drive on the table. "I kept records of everything. Every transaction, every conversation, every scheme she planned. I thought I could use it as insurance. But she's always been 10 steps ahead." I stared at the drive, then at my broken husband. In that moment, I made my final move. I pulled out my phone and dialed Agent Roberts while Daniel watched, his face draining of color. "I have everything you need," I said into the phone, "and a witness ready to testify." Daniel's shoulders slumped in defeat as I hung up. He knew it was over. Kate might have escaped with some money, but she'd lost her partner and her cover. As for Daniel, he was about to learn that betrayal comes with consequences, one way or another. The aftermath unfolded faster than I expected. With Daniel's testimony and the evidence I'd gathered, the FBI tracked Kate to Miami, where they arrested her attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. She had accounts scattered across 5 states and victims going back 6 years. Daniel, in exchange for his cooperation, received a lighter sentence, 5 years instead of 15. I attended their sentencing hearings, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. As I watched them both being led away in handcuffs, I felt no joy, no sadness, just a profound sense of closure. "The funds will be recovered and distributed among the victims," Agent Roberts told me afterward. "It'll take time, but you should get most of your money back." But I had already moved on. Parker and Reed had promoted me to head of their new fraud detection unit, inspired by how I'd uncovered Kate's scheme. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, truly mine this time. Nina helped me move in, arranging furniture and hanging pictures on a sunny Saturday afternoon. "You know what's funny?" I said, unpacking a box of books. "Daniel always said I was too trusting, too naive. Turns out I just trusted the wrong people." "And now?" Nina asked. I smiled, thinking of my new team at work, the other victims I'd helped, the life I'd rebuilt from scratch. Now I trust myself. And that's enough. Later that evening, standing in my new kitchen, I raised a glass to my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me was stronger, wiser, and finally, completely free.